All your base are belong to us. This horrible mistranslation became infamous back in 2001 when it spread widely across the internet. Reaching meme status, the phrase and accompanying image was posted on message boards across the internet. What people didn't pay attention to was the video game behind this meme. Zero Wing is a game that many people don't know that they know about. Does Zero Wing live up to the greatness of the meme it created, or is there a reason that nobody knows about it? Before I break down Zero Wing and tell you what is good and bad, I think I should first explain the great history behind the game. Back in 1989, Taito brought the Tau Plan-developed horizontal shmup Zero Wing to the arcades in Japan. The game barely set the arcades on fire, but it wasn't enough to warrant more releases. Shortly after its arcade release in Japan, Williams was licensed to manufacture and distribute the cabinet in the United States. But in 1991, Zero Wing was finally brought into the homes where it ultimately received its most popularity. On May 31st, 1991, Zero Wing made its way to the Sega Mega Drive in Japan. Other than a slight decrease in graphical capability, Zero Wing on the Mega Drive brought a brand new opening cinematic to the game for some story. On September 18th, 1992, Zero Wing was also brought to the PC Engine CD-ROM by Naxxac. Once again, this was only released in Japan. Later in 1992, Zero Wing finally made its English debut. Zero Wing was released for the Sega Mega Drive in Europe, along with its terrible mistranslation of the intro cinematic. Unfortunately, many gamers were unfamiliar with Zero Wing before the 2001 internet meme, because Zero Wing was never released for the Sega Genesis in North America. Now that we know the history of Zero Wing, let's dive into the game's story. Now as we're diving into the story, it should be known that Zero Wing barely has a story, but there is something there. The story is set up with the intro cinematic that was added in the Sega Mega Drive versions of the game, and the rest of the story is then somewhat told through the gameplay. The intro cinematic explains how in AD 2101, a great war broke out in space. A spaceship is destroyed by an unnamed enemy force led by a mysterious villain named Cats. Cats boards the ship before it is destroyed to inform the crew of how they, and those who are backing them all, have been taken over. The captain of the ship unleashes a smaller ship known as the Zig, which he escapes to. The captain then pilots the Zig in combat against the enemy force in order to save the universe. And then for the rest of the gameplay, while you are fighting through the enemy force as the Zig, that's how that segment of the story is told until you ultimately save the universe. While this is far from a compelling narrative, it does give a good introduction to set up the game. While the objective of shooting enemies is basic and self-explanatory, knowing why you are shooting them makes the game a bit more interesting. But it would have been much better if the localization crew had not messed up the English translation. At its core, Zero Wing is a horizontally side-scrolling shoot-'em-up or shmup game. It has a goal of feeling arcadey, and it successfully completes this goal. The player controls the Zig on a 2D plane while the screen scrolls horizontally to the right. While the screen scrolls, enemies will appear. It is the player's job to shoot these enemies with the weapons they have equipped. The Zig starts out with just being able to shoot from the front, but collecting a round, colored power-up will unleash 2 extra guns on either side of the ship. These guns can also shoot, of course. Collecting more colored power-ups will provide you with more and better weapons. The 3 colors of power-ups are red, blue, and green. Red shoots out a steady stream of red dots, blue shoots out blue-colored lines, and the green unleashes green dots, which track the enemies. Collecting 2 or more of the same color in succession will cause that particular power-up to grow into a stronger form. There are a total of 8 different planets you must explore, each planet being a level in the game. If you are a fan of shmups, you're pretty much guaranteed to enjoy Zeroing. Gamers who aren't fans of shmups could also quite easily enjoy the game. What Zeroing does best is how it slowly ramps up the difficulty and never becomes frustrating. After a bit of practice, the first few levels will be a breeze to fly through. Towards the end, though, the difficulty gets pretty high. What prevents Zeroing from being frustrating is how the game deals with deaths. When your ship is hit and explodes, you're instantly warped back to just before the position where you died. If you get a game over, selecting continue will bring you right back to the spot you were at just before you died. Checkpoints in Zeroing are excellent and are very encouraging for players to stick with the game through its difficulty. However, if you wish to complete Zeroing, you'll have to do so in one sitting, as Zeroing features no type of save system. What struck me as being odd with the Mega Drive ports of Zeroing was the complete lack of multiplayer. Zeroing started off as a single-player game when it was first introduced into Japanese arcades, but later featured 2 sets of joysticks and buttons for a second player to get in on the action. Being able to shoot down enemies and save the universe with a friend would have been a great addition to the home versions of Zeroing. I find it puzzling why this feature was removed, but the developers for the Mega Drive version likely had a good reason. While the lack of multiplayer doesn't necessarily take away from Zeroing's experience, it does feel like a little bit of a missed opportunity. The graphics in Zeroing are quite good for the Mega Drive, but they are far from maxing out the console. The backgrounds have eye-pleasing patterns that are quite beautiful, and the Zig ship also looks quite good. Possibly the greatest part of the graphics is how varied the enemies are. In each level of the game, you will see a cornucopia of new enemies. Only this applies to ships, which, when shot down, leave your weapon power-ups, are the ships that are repeated throughout the game. A large amount of new and varying enemies is incredibly impressive for a Sega Mega Drive game. While it may not be the best, it is damn impressive. As if the graphics were not impressive enough, the audio in Zeroing is even better. Without a doubt, Zeroing has one of my favorite rock soundtracks of the 16-bit era. The awesomeness of the audio in Zeroing cannot be explained in words. Instead, it can only be explained by listening to it yourself. Even if you don't enjoy the gameplay, graphics, or anything else from Zeroing, make sure that you at least experience the audio. Overall, Zeroing is an incredibly overshadowed game. If you can make your way through the internet meme haze, you will find yourself a great shoot-'em-up game. Of course, the story is lacking, despite their attempts. There is no replay value, and the graphics aren't the best. But Zeroing is still a fantastic game. Despite not being released natively in North America, I highly recommend that you find at least some way to experience this true hidden gem.